doom it to exist eternally on the planet remorse of conscience. Well, it was just then, my boy, after the dwellers on the holy planet had sanctioned this resolution, that, as I expressed it, that turmoil broke out there, which even until now, not one of the sacred individuals who knew this epic story can recall without, so to say, shuddering. This turmoil was evoked there in the following way. After the said resolution was carried, it was soon undertaken, on the initiative of all those 50 chosen candidates for the Sun Absolute, to elucidate just which terrestrial three-brained being, with perhaps his higher being part already formed in him, was the cause of the arising on this planet of yours of such a maleficent idea. And according to this elucidation, it turned out that that three-brained being who was the first to give the beginning of the crystallizing of that maleficent idea was a certain Makari Kronberg-Zion, whose higher being part, perfected to the required gradation of reason, had not only become worthy to go to the holy planet, but was even already considered one of the first candidates to be taken on to the most holy Sun Absolute. As was afterwards related to me, when this became known, a groan, so to say, hovered over the whole holy planet, and there was not a single righteous soul there who could think without remorse about this terrible fact. For almost a quarter of a year, they only judged back and forth about this unprecedented turmoil, and in each Zaruari, commissions and subcommissions of every kind again set to work to resolve such an extraordinary situation as had arisen. The result of it all was that the following resolution, again on the same basis, was this time passed: to leave in abeyance the first common planetary sentence, which was passed concerning the higher part of Makari Kronberg-Zion, and to lay at the feet of his almost gracious endlessness the request of all the dwellers of the holy planet to mitigate this terrifying sentence. And therefore, at the next appearance on the holy planet of our almost gracious Creator Endlessness, this request was laid at his feet. Our almost gracious Creator then, as it is said, only thought a little, and then consented to command that this deserving soul should continue to exist on the holy planet, until the future results of his evil deed should be revealed. In spite of the fact that this completely formed higher being part was the fundamental cause of the impossibility for all the higher being bodies which arise in the presences of certain three-brained beings of this planet to perfect themselves completely, this gracious command was given by our common Father, evidently because he hoped that ultimately these three-brained beings themselves might perhaps cognize their errors and begin to exist as is becoming to three-centered beings to exist. And in that case, there would be no need to punish so terribly the higher part of that being who, without yielding to adverse conditions, not depending on himself, and much stronger than his possibilities, and mercilessly struggling with his own inevitable denying principle, was able to perfect himself to such a gradation, thanks to which he had acquired the possibility of reaching the threshold of the basis of everything existing in the universe. Owing to the said command of our almost gracious Creator, the higher part of this poor Makari Kronberg-Zion now still exists on the holy planet, and his future now depends exclusively only on the three-brained beings who have taken your fancy. After rather a long pause, Beelzebub continued thus: the information concerning these events proceeding on the holy planet first reached me during my 6th personal descent on the surface of your planet, And I, of course, having become very interested in it all, began on my part also to investigate in detail on the spot this distressing story connected with the three-brained beings who have taken your fancy. First of all, my boy, I consider it necessary to tell you sincerely, just to you, my direct substitute, that although all the righteous dwellers on the holy planet, with the help of various and at the same time very elaborate means, made it clear that the fundamental cause of all the abnormalities of the psyche of these three-brained beings who have taken your fancy was, and until now still is, only this maleficent idea. Yet, nevertheless, I cannot myself confirm this categorically. Of course, it cannot be denied that this fantastic idea played a big part in respect of the gradual, so to say, dilution of the psyche of these unfortunates. Many impressions were taken in me and data crystallized for a subjective opinion. When, having become interested in this story, I began, among other things, to make my researches and to make clear to myself also the story of the arising and formation of this same Makari Kronberg-Zion. It was just these same special investigations of mine which clearly showed me that although he indeed first used the words good and evil, yet he was not to blame that these words later acquired there in the process of the existence of the beings of all subsequent generations such a maleficent sense for your favorites. If, my boy, I now initiate you into information I learned concerning the history of the arising and process of the existence there of this Makari Kronberg-Zion, then perhaps corresponding data would be crystallized in you for an approximate representation concerning this terrestrial fact. I shall begin by saying that when I decided to occupy myself there with this, I then began from that time on, whenever I met any corresponding individual, to inquire about everything which in totality might throw some light on one or other aspect of the individuality of this Makari Kronberg-Zion. You will probably be interested to learn that among the first individuals I met who could give me some information about what I've said, a very aged being of our tribe turned out to be very useful. In conversation, he cleared up many things for me and indicated to me several very good sources from which I later drew very useful and detailed information. This elderly being about whom I now speak was none other than the uncle of that young being of our tribe on whose account I had to descend to this planet of yours the first time, and who afterwards became the chief over all the beings of our tribe who were exiled to that system, Ors. This mentioned elderly being of your planet existed just on the continent Atlantis, and just at that period when that Makari Kronberg-Zion existed there also. According to all the information I learned, and also according to every other special method of my investigation, it transpired that this terrestrial three-brained being named Makari Kronberg-Zion arose and began to exist there on the continent Atlantis from the sacred process of El Moarno, which proceeded between two terrestrial beings there of different sex who had just reached responsible age. Owing to the fact that this couple had a healthy heredity in every respect, and that the external conditions of ordinary being existence in general there were still